Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May podcast. How'd that do? Awesome. How was that intro?
That was great. And we're, about to take the show on the road with going to Burma, Texas for a few days to talk to some recruits. The truth is I'm actually already there, but it's a worldwide podcast and we're covering that globe on our Tim May podcast private plane.
Yeah, you're back to the future right now, and we truth in advertising. We are recording this before you and Berm hit the big blue skies on the way to the great state of Texas, where the stars are bright, or stars are at night are big and bright. Speaking of stars at night, big and bright, I know you guys are going to drop in on Quinn Ewers for sure. The pledge to the Ohio State 2022 class. You're under the impression he's extremely stuck with that pledge, right?
Yeah, that's what he said, and I'm waiting to hear that straight out of his mouth and talk to him and get to know him a little bit better. We've also got, our annual position previews series coming at Lettermen Row starting next week with quarterbacks. So there'll be a lot of Quinn Ewers talk, a lot of Stroud, Jack Miller, Kyle McCord as well. But it fits nicely that we get to go talk to that crown jewel, the number one quarterback in the country. Some believe the best player overall in the country, and hear his thoughts because it's going to be interesting. It's, as we've said a number of times, there's one football, there's one guy who can play that spot at a time. And you're talking about now 19 recruiting stars out of a possible 20. That'll be tough to manage as always, but just his thoughts on that and his relationship with Ryan Day and Corey Dennis, Kevin Wilson, and what he sees for his future.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about on last week's podcast, I mean, this has become, I don't know if you want to call it quarterback U, but it's definitely quarterback U this year with three guys in the running for the starting job. And then next year, you got a five-star coming in Quinn Ewers, who would like to compete for the job immediately, obviously. And it's interesting because on my podcast today, my special guest is the father of the last five-star quarterback to start for Ohio State by the name of Justin Fields. Pablo Fields is going to be on the podcast here in a few minutes, and we're going to discuss everything that went on leading up to the draft. But, what's next sort of for his son, and what's it like to be the father of somebody in that kind of, at one point, a maelstrom, but it cleared up pretty well for him. The tornado dropped him in Chicago with the 11th pick in the first round of the NFL draft. As I said last week, not too shabby, right?
It wound up being a great spot for him. And a lot of times these things work out the way they're supposed to. So a lot of interesting stuff to go on. A wild 3-4 months, a wild 3 years or more for that Fields family. And these thoughts. That's obviously going to be a great conversation, and look forward to hearing all of that before we come back. And as you say, chop it up.
Well, hey, you know what? Without further ado, let's get to that conversation. We're going to come back, and we're going, if this show has a theme, it's about transfers, one way or the other. And we all know Justin Fields transferred to Ohio State after really less than a year at Georgia. And Ohio State, as we all know, and we'll talk about it when we get back, has benefited greatly from transfers over the last few years. So, what the Lord giveth, the Lord sometimes taketh away in college football. And, we'll talk about Jameson Williams and some of the other things that have happened over the last couple of weeks. But then moving forward, how things are impacting Ohio State, where you see they could be going yet again in the transfer portal. But, without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Pablo Fields. And as promised, ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined on the Tim May podcast by a fellow I've been looking forward to talking to for a while, Pablo Fields. Welcome to the Tim May podcast.
Thank you, Tim. I'm glad to be here. I listened to quite a few of them while being a Buckeye, and I love the way you guys cover the Buckeyes, and it just was great. Love Austin. Met him on a plane going out to Miami, and he's a great dude. So love everything.
Hey, we try to do our best, man, to give. I mean, we're basically the most watched website out there when it comes to Ohio State football coverage. And I was glad to join them after I retired from the Columbus Dispatch after about 37 years of being the beat writer on Ohio State football for those guys. And but I always like Austin Ward. I call him Awesome Ward. You call him Austin, but he's always on my podcast every week as a little guest. And we were just talking about one of the thrills is meeting not just the players, but players' families, et cetera, seeing where they're from, what's the background behind them and stuff. And this has been a long time coming, having you on my podcast. But just how proud are you sitting here right now, a little over a week removed from the 2021 NFL draft, and watching your son, who you've known since he was since he was this big, become a first-round draft pick, 11th player taken in the 2021 draft by the Chicago Bears. How cool, as you look back on it now, how cool is it to have watched that, to have witnessed that, and to see how far he's come?
It's bittersweet. COVID last year and not going to those tailgates, the Ohio State fans, man, the hospitality there, going from the hotel where we let the boys go and going down to the parking lot there. And we didn't get that last year. We feel like we got robbed a year. So it's kind of bittersweet moving on. But, I am proud of him and the work he's put in, and just to go on and live his dream out and be a professional football player. It's great. It's new challenges and new stress, put on your plate, but it's great to move on to the next challenge and the next chapter.
Pablo, he's always stepped up, right? And I would think this isn't blowing smoke. I would think you would expect him to step up again, right? I mean, it is a new challenge, a new chapter. As the old saying goes, when you're a little kid, you're playing up. Some kids are better at it than others, but you expect him to handle it, don't you?
I really do. I mean, he's had challenges that weren't written about or talked about on podcasts, throughout his whole career, from Little League, having a challenge at quarterback there, to high school, middle school, of course, college, and moving on to Ohio State from Georgia. I mean, he's had a lot of challenges and a lot of adversity, and it's only helped him. It's only made him stronger. So we hate going through the storms. You always hate going through those storms of adversity, but man, you come out stronger on the other side. So they are always good for him.
Yeah, I'll get to the latest tempest in a minute, but I wanted to ask you this. He had a peewee. There was a team he was on as a peewee quarterback who maybe they had a doubt about whether he should be the starter. What was the hint there you give me? I bet it was the coach's son, right?
No, actually, I was the coach.
Oh.
And I think a lot of the parents, everybody gets a trophy nowadays. They wanted their son to be like my son. I mean, I would break down the stats. I was like, my kid touched the ball. He carried the ball 7 times. I know he went to the house 4 times, but your kid carried the ball 15 times and he never went to the house. So I can't, I had it all broke down analytically for him, but it's still, it was his own challenges, but some pretty good quarterbacks actually. I gave in, and because they thought Justin was the better athlete, and I made my own son play tailback, and the quarterback that played, he went on to play for Penn, and now he's at Western Carolina, Ryan Glover. So
wow.
Some good quarterbacks in the challenges that he went through coming up. So
yeah. How did you explain things like that to him, though? I mean, when he was coming up and stuff, that there would be challenges. And what did you see about him that told you he was maybe special in that regard? Forget about his athletic ability, but of embracing, a challenge, because a lot of kids shy away from things like that.
They weren't easy, but I mean, he can go play running back and, get a bunch of touchdowns. I'm talking about in that situation. But he took him head on, and he always got better from him. I'll never forget the, in the 10th grade, as a 10th grader in high school. I mean, he just, every time he throw incompletion, they'd be like, "Hey, come and sit beside me." He just went through it. And, the next year he told me, "Hey, I'm not coming out of the game next year." And he put in the work. You saw that black truck leaving the house at 6:30, and he'd have a bag of balls, and he'd go throw into the lacrosse net because no receivers were going to come and get up an hour and a half early to catch for him. So, he put in the work wherever he, met adversity.
Wait a minute. This sounds like we've scripted this whole thing. I'm shocked. Wait a minute. What you mean he wasn't last in, first out when he was a kid?
Nah, none of that. No.
Pablo, when you heard that, when you read that, et cetera, and people made I'm talking about a build up to the draft. Everybody knows what I'm talking about because Awesome Ward and I, we've dissected that a million times. We just it's funny. It's funny what people say either to bring a person down or to get attention. It's all about clicks in this world anymore, one way or the other. But when you heard and read, saw that as a father, what was your first reaction? You know what I'm talking about, that the assessment that he was the last in, first out mentality, didn't really get into the film room much, blah, 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 when he was at Ohio State, which was exactly the opposite of what he was. What was your reaction? Did you want to scream at somebody? Did you want to punch somebody? I know you're a former policeman, so you probably wouldn't want to punch somebody immediately, but you know what I'm saying? You'd have more restraint. But what was your reaction?
Well, the reaction was that it bothered him. That's one of the few things that bother him. You guys can say pretty much anything, and he's got this bulletproof vest on or something. Nothing really bothers him, but that was the one thing that bothered there, the work, because he knows the work, that he puts in it, changing his diet. We just took a little 28-day detox to try to lose a couple pounds during COVID, and he stayed a vegan, so he put in work. He works all the time. Actually over COVID, I thought he was overworking because I was here and he was here, and, you're lifting weights, you're throwing, and you're running all in one day. Do you do that much at Ohio State? No, probably not. But it was like he was working too much. So that's the only thing that bothered him. And it gets you prepared. In high school, people don't really say mean things about high school kids, and you've been protecting your kid all his life. I mean, from he's little, telling him not to go out in the street or stay out of the bushes or away from bees. You've been protecting them, and then you get to this world and the world of social media where everybody has an opinion and they attack their character and everything else. So if you don't want to be considered a crazy parent, I mean, there's plenty of responsive that I've typed out, responses to whatever, and then I deleted them. And then I was smart enough to stay off that stuff and not dive really deep into it. And, I just kind of didn't cut it on NFL Network or ESPN during the last month. I kind of just stayed off of it and didn't listen to it and did other things. Yeah.
As I said on my podcast last week, I said, if you're going to, and this isn't, I'm not getting you to get into this debate, but for example, if you're going to pick a quarterback in the tryout game was Ohio State versus Clemson this past year, and now it takes a village to make a quarterback. Let's that you coached football, you played football, but I just thought that Clemson game told me everything I wanted to know about Justin Fields, because number one, he was quite prepared. Number two, he took one of the hardest hits I've ever seen a quarterback take. Forget about whether he got up or not, but he got up and kept playing and had the greatest game by an Ohio State quarterback in a bowl game I've ever seen. And believe me, I've seen about as many as anybody. And Trevor Lawrence's team got beat, and we saw the beating he took, et cetera. But what more did you really need to know as a pro scout about the young man than that? That's the way I looked at it. And I don't know, what was just your reaction of watching that game and watching your son rise to the occasion on so many levels that night?
Well, I'm pretty superstitious. So, I wouldn't take any hugs, before I remember his mom's dad trying to give me a hug. I was like, hey, I don't want Trevor Lawrence to have the greatest comeback in history and we lose this thing. No congratulatory hug, none of that until I think it was about 3 or 4 minutes. I went on and relaxed and, start celebrating a little bit. So, a great performance. And, I knew he was hurt, and I've been since high school, I've been telling him, leave that spin move alone. I understand the circumstances in that game. You remember the year before we kept getting threes when we should have got sevens.
Yes.
So we're 2 yards from the first down. He's trying to get a first down, but hey, that game, you got to leave it all on the field. So I understand the spin move there and, not to slide and take the three. So, it was a great game, great feeling. It really was.
Yeah. But I'm just like, I'm getting to, I thought that if you wanted a consummate example of what Justin Fields is all about and what he can bring to your program, I'm talking about your pro football team, that would be the video to watch for all kinds of reasons. The Alabama game was what it was. Ohio State was shorthanded. I'm not making excuses. You lose Trey Sermon on the second play of the game, et cetera. Everything was different about that day. But we move on. I wanted to ask you, do you think the stuff that was said about him before the draft did affect where he was taken? But then again, I'll give you another feel too. Chicago almost had a parade when they got him, so, sometimes you're better as a quarterback to drop in the first round because you actually fall to a team that all it needs is a quarterback, as opposed to a team that needs a quarterback, a left tackle, a right guard, and a wide receiver and a running back. So just give me sort of your feel for that, watching that night, but seeing where he finally ended up.
We, had a family prayer before it. And my prayer leading up to the draft was, hey, God, let your will be done. He's only faced what other men have met. Plenty of people have dropped. It comes up a la Aaron Rodgers, where he was supposed to go number one and went all the way in the 20s. So we're only, but other men have met, and it's happened before. So we just want to, all things work together for the good. I know that's, a verse, and it's kind of cliche, but it really does. It works out, and, where he went is great. And we're excited about it. And it's funny, when we played Northwestern, I guess in 19, we played Northwestern. My wife and I, we were down on Michigan Avenue. It was October. The weather was good. And we were just sitting out, people watching. I was like, man, I would love for him to come here. And, hey, it happened. So Chicago wanted him. And, I was eavesdropping in on the Zoom call with the coach. He was home then. And I just really liked what he was saying, and it felt like that they really wanted him. And I wanted him to go to a place that wanted him. I didn't want him to go to a place where the GM wanted him, but the head coach didn't. I didn't want to get into that, Pandora's box of who wanted him and who didn't. The organization, everything is all in. So that's where we want to be. Yeah,
I was going to say they moved a lot of pieces on the chessboard to get to him too. That's. Like you said, everything was set up, and the GM and the head coach were literally right on line with what they wanted. And they couldn't believe, I think, as things developed, because, you can't give away the whole franchise to get a guy, but the way it worked out. And you're right. I think Chicago, man, it's like Big Ten City. It's where the Big Ten headquarters, et cetera, is around there, et cetera. It's a great fit for him. Hey, real quick, I refuse to comment on this because I knew about his situation with epilepsy a couple of years ago, but it was not news to me from the standpoint of that's something that you either that person volunteers it or you don't write about it. You don't report it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because it really never affected his football playing from what I saw, et cetera. When that came out, did that bother you at all? Did you feel like a little bit of like maybe private information about your son had been exposed, and obviously, he owned up to it, for want of another term, the night after the draft when he was asked about it and stuff. But just what did it feel like, I guess, as a parent to see that exposed, I guess, when it was? Because it seemed to me to be another sort of swing at the pinata, if you follow my drift.
Yeah, it was. And, I won't go into how it did surface or become public, all the stuff that was thrown out to make him hopefully drop. But actually it was a relief to us. It's like the Band-Aid was ripped off and it was, it's finally out. So it wasn't, it was like, it was bad for a couple of hours. And it was like, cool. They're either going to take him or not. He's never missed a practice, a day of school, a football game, or anything else because of it. So, whoop-de-doo. So,
yeah.
So it's Band-Aid ripped off. It's out. We're good.
What is it like as a father to see your son basically, you know what he's going to make. Everybody knows how much money he's going to make over the next several years because it's public knowledge. What is it like to see him, if he plays his cards right, if he puts his money in the right bank, set up basically for life? What does that do for a father? You know what I mean? From a what's the word of a feeling of confidence, whatever, about your son's future from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, I just hope he takes care of it. He, he makes it to give it away, to give it away, live comfortably. Don't, we want to be a reservoir, not a dam. So you're blessed to be a blessing. And, hopefully he's smart with it. It's more money, of course, than I've ever made being a policeman or even scratching the surface. But, I'm proud and fine with the money, but as long as he can just do what he loves to do. And what I try to tell him is there is plenty of fun to have when you retire. Trust me. Just go ahead and do what you got to do. Be a great quarterback now. Put your work in, and you'll have plenty of time to spend that when you retire, because as well as I do, NFL not for long. We never know when that career is going to end. And there's life after. Even if he goes Tom Brady, whenever Tom Brady does, it's still plenty of life after 45. I think you're a couple years older than 45, and that there's plenty of life after 45 to have a good time. So,
hey, what are you trying to say about me? I look old? No, I'm just joking, man. I'm 67. I own up to it.
But I did see an old press conference, and I forget which game it was. And they were in an old brick room, and I was like, hey, that's Tim May right there, like Ohio State stuff I was watching. So you've been covering it a while. So
yeah, I've been covering it a while, man. I tell you what, I've changed. I'm whatever. But you know what? I'll tell you something, Pablo. I've never hit a golf ball farther than I hit it now. So it's all about the moves, the technique. You follow me?
I guess so. I just took my first golf lesson a couple weeks ago. I went out Saturday and took another one. So I can't play pickup basketball anymore. Just the knees won't do it and carrying too much weight. So I got to figure out how to do this golf thing. But
I want to ask you, has anybody ever learned to play golf faster than your son? Because I don't think he had ever hit a golf ball until basically when he told us, maybe for fun one time. But I think he's become a pretty decent golfer, hasn't he?
Yeah, he unfortunately, he can do everything. I mean, he just, I thought every kid was like that. He's my only boy, and he could do so many things. And I'll tell you a story. I went to coach T-ball when he was, I guess, 4. Yeah, 4. They get the dads just out there and coach. And I thought all the boys could catch and throw like him. And I told the kid, hey, you got your glove ready? You ready? And I threw the ball at the kid and hit him dead in the eye. His mom came out of the bleachers and cussed me out. I was like, man, I thought I started realizing he was different at the time. He can pretty much do everything pretty good.
Hey, if he didn't play football, what would have been his sport in your opinion? What would have been his best, I guess, avenue other than football?
Oh, baseball, definitely. I think he's there. Honestly, he just played it without pressure. I mean, but here, baseball games, it's pretty big here, but you got 85 people in the stands for a baseball game. But when you're the high school quarterback, there's 4,000 people in the stands. So, he was a really good baseball player. And he stopped playing basketball in the eighth grade. It's just hard to do 3 sports in high school, but he was a really good basketball player too.
Yeah, it's funny because I've got 3 kids. I got 2 boys and a girl, and my middle kid, Corey, he was just a natural baseball player. He was fast like his mom. His mom was a high jumper and ran track in high school and college at Ohio State, as a matter of fact. And he was a natural center fielder. You could put him at shortstop. He was a hell of a pitcher. You know what I mean? And I didn't like baseball because I had to cover some Major League Baseball way back when, and I didn't like dealing with some of the play. You know what I mean? A lot of things. And I said, of course, God blessed me with a good baseball player. Yeah. But it is amazing. These guys that can do it, man, they can do pretty much anything. Last thing, if there was the equivalent of the NFL for softball, would you be sitting on top of another bonus baby here? I mean, with Jaden, at softball wise,
no. She wants to do what you do.
Really?
She wants to get sidelines and be Maria Taylor. She got in the school of journalism at UGA, and that's tough to get into. It wasn't all because of her GPA. It was the things she was doing on the side, podcasts, YouTube videos, things of that nature. So proud of her. Now she loves softball, but she wants to she wants to do the reporting thing and the sports thing. So that's her dream that she wants to do.
Well, if she works hard like Justin, et cetera. I mean, and the thing I like about Justin is he's engaging. He's kind of studies the situation, et cetera, but he doesn't back down from a question. We found that out about him, and it really bummed me out that month leading up to the draft because a guy, you go out there and you scream another thing about him, but most people pay attention to the squeaky wheel. You know what I mean? And it was a joy, by the way, being around and covering your son the last couple of years. I just want to let you know that, Pablo.
Good. It was great the way you guys covered him. So I just loved the Ohio State media. Even when he went 4 for 13 in that spring game, you guys wasn't too hard on him.
Yeah.
That was rough. I was like, man, he has a piece together offensive line. You got Chase Young and couple of they're full strength. Yeah. And you can touch him and he's down in a spring game, but just not seeing the Justin that I know that can play. But you guys were fair and great. And I just enjoyed my time being a dad with you guys covering Ohio State football.
Hey, real quick though, tell me something. When you saw that spring games, we were all sitting there going, because we didn't get to watch a lot of practice and stuff. And we're just going, wait a minute, this is the guy. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about from a stat standpoint. What did you notice about him from that moment on that, what did you like, I guess, about the way he reacted to like maybe not, they're not being rose petals in front of him suddenly, if you follow my drift?
It's another adversity. It was adversity that he met head on. That was a tough, part of Justin's game, you can't put a hand on him and you call it a sack. You just can't. So you just put all into the sack. And if you remember, we had like 3 offensive linemen out. They batted down before 4 for 13. I think they batted down about 4 balls. They were all in the offensive line on that day. And he didn't throw the ball, but 13 times. So it was another storm that we had to get through. That was a long, April till September we started playing. Man, that was a long time to let him get out there and prove himself. But when he got out there and the 4th play of that game, he ran that touchdown. Man, you're just talking about a monkey or a piano off your back. It's like, we're here. Good. Yeah. We're good to go.
I was going to say, that's what I was going to say. I think he still calls that one of maybe the greatest play or most important play he's had, because it really, when you ease the tension of 100,000 people and maybe millions more watching on television, that, hey, this guy does have the goods, it changes everybody's opinion, right? Or it changes everybody's outlook.
It does. That's the one he remembers the most and the one I remember the most. It was just like relief, it was just like, man, thank God.
But I want to tell you something, Pablo, before you go. That was a great run and stuff, but I'm telling you, I've said this to people on radio shows across the country. I've been asked about him and all these kind of things. And what got me about Justin is as 2019 went on, 2020 went on, when we got to watch him in game, he got better almost possession to possession in games. And you could see him become so much more of a polished passer, for example, as it went along and stuff. Has he always had that about him of like not being content, but like getting better? If you watch that on him his whole life, if you follow, what I'm saying there?
Yeah. Never complacent, always trying to get better at his craft and just do better and better. As I say, the comment about him now, that one is not true. They take the and progress. I go to my first read. Why would you go to your second, third if your first one? I never played quarterback. I was a linebacker. But if your first option is open, and that's going to move the change. Hey, throw to it, keep the chains moving, and go down the field. So he's always been a worker, and never comfortable, and he wants to be the best. He really does.
I spent half a podcast explaining that to people that college football, the way Ryan Day designs plays, and Steve Sarkisian, at Alabama and stuff, it's all about getting a guy wide open and throwing the ball to. It's like we'll see with a progression. Patrick Mahomes has made a career out of spinning around and getting out of trouble and throwing the ball. Justin Fields can do very much the same thing if he has to, but he would prefer to run the offense, and that's where I think you'll be in good stead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with you. Yep.
Yeah. And last thing, does he have the wherewithal to be a franchise quarterback from your opinion? The stepping back as a father, giving me an objective look. He's got the build. He's got the look. I think he's got the approach to the media and stuff that's almost perfect because, just tell him what you got to tell him, don't spill a lot of secrets, et cetera. But then he has the studious part. He wants to be better. What do you see 5-10 years down the line for your son, barring any kind of catastrophe, et cetera? Does he have the goods to be a franchise quarterback?
Yeah, I believe so. And that's our hope and prayer that we'll go one place, stay it. That usually doesn't true in this day like it did back in the day. But, hopefully it's home there, used to the cold weather. And he will be a fast quarterback. Find me a spot in a suite, which they couldn't do at the Horseshoe because everybody's and I couldn't any of those suites. It was one of the guys in the suite one day, and he was flagging me up, and I was like, man, I can't. Finally went up there, and I just to get who it was, one of the rich guys that has a suite.
Yeah.
And like a red alert. There's like, oh, Mr. Fields is in the suite. Mr. Fields. They had radio traffic, everything, calling me on my cell phone. It was like pre-game. It was like an hour before the game, but I sure hope he's franchise quarterback. I'm getting up there in age, and I can, sit in the comforts of a night and get out of that weather,
Yeah. Well, I would say if there's anybody in Chicago that can afford to get you a suite, if in fact it doesn't work, it would be your son at this point. He not only has connections, but he has the wherewithal, right?
Yeah. Well, we went to Chicago last week when they told us the price of the suite. There's I better bundle up.
Hey, Pablo, man, I'm gonna have you on again, man. If you don't mind, down the road, man, we'll check in on your son because we're all curious on where this train is going, and I think the train's really just getting started. What's your take?
That's what I hope, brother. I hope it's a long track.
Pablo Fields, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining the Tim May podcast.
All right, thank you, Tim. Have a good day.
You too. Yeah, awesome. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't properly introduce my co-pilot. I think everybody knows it by now. Awesome. You know him as
I don't even need it.
Yeah. I'm telling you, this guy's qualified to fly this plane, believe it or not. I know you see him on every platform we have on lettermenrow.com, but I enjoy having him on ours because we're too, I guess I'm a former beat writer. He's a beat writer and extraordinaire and keeping up with everything Ohio State. This is by far the best website to catch up with anything that has to do with Ohio State, either past, present, or future. And I'll leave it at that. There are some imitators out there, but there's only one genuine. That's the lettermenrow.com. But I digress.
Well said. I'm not sure what else. The track record speaks for itself, so I don't know what else needs to be said.
I was about to go off on a tangent there, but awesome. I pulled myself back because sometimes when you recognize an obscure website, for something they did, which was total fabrication from whole cloth. When they talk about yours truly, I'm talking about myself about something. It really, really upset me a week and a half ago. Now I've let it kind of roll off my back, but I will say this for the record, for anybody who happens to know what I'm talking about and was paying attention that night. I've never, ever spoken to Bud Foster, for example. And when Ohio State played Virginia Tech in 2014, when I was alleged to have done something, which I didn't do, I was that whole day, I was at my son's wedding and then a celebration afterwards. One of only 3 Ohio State football games I missed while covering Ohio State for the Columbus Dispatch over 30 something years. So I just leave it at that. Just be careful who you take information from out there, ladies and gentlemen, especially people who purport to be big time experts when in fact, a lot of times they're just flat winging it and faking it. How was that, Austin?
I thought what was most bizarre about when you sent me that screenshot over the weekend, we don't have to get into it, but I knew for a fact, I'm thinking that's the only game in now 10 years for me that I've been in Columbus and covering this team and sitting next to you in the press conferences in the Woody. That's the only game that you've not been there. I've missed more games than you.
Yeah.
We don't miss a lot, but the timing of that one instantly stood in my mind. I know for a fact that you didn't cover the Virginia Tech game. So anyway.
Well, it just makes you wonder when somebody makes something totally up. And it wasn't just that, it was the other part of that forum paragraph that really, really set me off. Because anyway, I won't get into it because I don't want to give it any more credence than it's due, which is basically me spitting on it on the ground and stepping on it. Now, past that, you guys, you and Berm, as we tape this, you and Jeremy Birmingham, a.k.a. Berm, as I call him, Birmingham, Alabama, you guys are headed are in this great state of Texas as people listen to this. Y'all are traveling around, so we're sort of time traveling here. But that's one of my coolest things I've ever done. I still do it on occasion, is get to see where some of these Ohio State players are from, just get a sense of their background, what kind of helped them get to the heights they are now, and get to visit with Quinn Ewers and travel around the Austin area, hanging out, maybe the Houston area. I think you guys are doing that this week. I'm just promoting it because I think it's cool. You do get a sense for these guys, right?
Yeah. And it's, Berm and I have loved doing it. Berm, obviously, because he covers recruiting, can, sit down and have some of the in-person interviews, which he does so well with the Bermanology stuff. He's had to adapt a little bit more of that on Zoom, but as we all have for the last year. But I like to go and, meet their coaches and their families sometimes and write some deeper features about these guys, whether they're committed or not. Generally, I want them to be someone I know I'm going to cover. There's not a lot of value for me otherwise, but to write some of these longer form features, which I've done some really cool ones in the past and, got right before COVID hit last March, a year ago, and Berm and I were doing this in the off season over to Virginia for Travion Henderson and North Carolina for Evan Pryor. And we were driving on the way back from Evan Pryor, who was getting ready to come visit Columbus and commit then. And we had to it was that weekend, we had to kind of finagle around, move some of the, dateline pieces and time frames because he gave us an interview where he's going to commit, waiting to post over the weekend. Well, he couldn't come. That we had Tom Hanks, I think I'm sitting in the passenger seat and that comes up. I'm like, okay, this thing is escalating. So it's cool to get, we actually Ohio State canceled the spring game while we were in the car. So we drove once we got back, went straight to the Horseshoe and, shot a video like, what is this? Like, what's happening? It's serious. How does, they still hadn't canceled pro day and all this other stuff at that point. We didn't know what was going to happen if they were going to finish camp. But anyway, the point is these things are really valuable and I love doing them. Texas is about it. We've done some in LA. We did that with CJ Stroud 2 years ago during his recruitment. So an opportunity to get this opportunity back, I think is really important for me and Berm and Lettermen Row. And we hope that people enjoy that coverage that's coming.
I know this fella's college career hasn't panned out like he thought it would. Maybe there's still one more shot. We'll see. But like Elijah Gardner, for example, I remember I went and visited with him and his family in Kemp, Texas, on my way to see my mom one spring. The spring before he showed up at Ohio State. And he was running track that day, and it's just cool because most of these guys are the superstars of their teams. Now, when you travel through the state of Texas, a lot of these teams like South Lake Carroll, where Quinn Ewers is from, they got a lot of superstars running around the field. Quinn Ewers plays in a stadium that seats over 20,000, that they had to kind of rebuild when it developed cracks in it. But I mean, it's an infamous and famous stadium all at the same time and stuff. But what is the coolest place you've been so far where you kind of got a sense of what that guy is from, that young man, what kind of molded him, that kind of gave you, for one of another term, you and I, we both get excited about football, about college football and stuff. And guys where they pull themselves up from the bootstraps or get shoved out in there, et cetera, depending on their background. But what's a place that you still remember that kind of gave you that kind of cool feel?
Yeah, I think it was the other end of the spectrum when Berm and I were in Los Angeles and went over to St. John Bosco.
Yeah.
And we watched the game. So we got to see Court Williams play. It's one reason why, I've actually seen him do some of that bullet stuff in person. But when you walk onto that campus, and it was an off day, so Wyatt Davis had flown home. He kind of gave us a little bit of lay of the land out there. We talked to, him about that program. And so we were there in the afternoon to do some interviews, and we went to their, game that night. And you just walk around in this place. It looks exactly like a college campus. It's not as large as Ohio State, obviously, or others, but just the way it was structured in their day and, their workout facility over here and the nice, turf field. And you could tell why that was a program that continues to crank out, 4 and 5 star recruits, high level guys, and why Ohio State has made it an emphasis to continue to recruit players there. There's more in the pipeline that Ohio State is after out there. So you could tell how well prepared, why Wyatt Davis, why Court Williams, when they showed up on campus, it wasn't unfamiliar to them. So that was pretty cool. In fact, that same trip that we saw CJ Stroud, and his program was very different. It was why he was maybe a little bit under the radar, but he just had this field, like maybe, 1,000 people could go watch him play. And then there's some of the mountains right behind it. It was a beautiful place, but it was like, you had people out there doing their. So Court Williams, like the whole team is in their nice workout gear before the day, Nike stuff. CJ Stroud's got some teammates that had like jeans on for a walkthrough before, a playoff game. And it's like, they all come from different. This was one trip and maybe, 48 hours for both 4 and 5 star guys. And, it's all different. Everybody has a different path, but that was a really fun trip.
Dude, I keep saying if he ends up being the starting quarterback, seems like signs are pointing that direction, but Ryan Day hasn't declared it yet. But first starting quarterback for Ohio State from Rancho Cucamonga. I mean, what more needs to be said, right? The Cucamonga offense. From anywhere. Yeah, unbelievable. Hey, well, last thing I want to touch on, just make it really brief because you got to go. Yeah. The transfer portal giveth, the transfer portal taketh away. We've seen Ohio State benefit greatly the last several years, not the least of which was last year, starting backfill with Justin Fields, formerly of Georgia, Trey Sermon, formerly of Oklahoma. Sermon was there for just a year. Justin Fields was there for just 2 years and stuff. And yet, we see Jameson Williams, like we pointed out on last week's podcast, headed to Alabama. We see a guy defect from Ohio State and from a commitment standpoint head elsewhere. We see the kid that Ohio State was trying to lure from Tennessee, the linebacker. A lot of people thought that he was headed to Ohio State, but he picked Alabama in the transfer portal. That's just kind of life in the modern times, right?
Yeah, and I think that people will take this. It'll be perceived as another win for Alabama over Ohio State, and lump in Jameson Williams and the national title game all together. And there's nothing you can do about that perception, but they're really 3 separate cases. They're not tied together. Alabama and Ohio State are the 2 most talented teams in the country. That's why they met each other in January. Ohio State wasn't full strength. I don't know now in hindsight if that would have made any difference with how historically gifted that program was. But Jameson Williams, that's not a head-to-head loss to Alabama. And in fact, Ohio State continues to be in great shape at wide receiver. Not really even a true blow to them. Now this one, when losing out with Henry to that's a position of need.
Right, let me interrupt you. That's easy for you to say. Go ahead now.
Well, if I'm getting it wrong, I won't have to worry about it quite as much as I was at this time a week ago.
Till the last game of the year, this coming year. But go ahead.
That's right. Until they're back on the field together. That one will sting. I'd say. Much more than Jameson Williams. Ohio State absorbs that, moves on. depth is no problem at that position. Obviously, Ohio State wanted to upgrade and enhance the situation at linebacker. Can they be fine if they don't add somebody? Yeah, but the talent is going to have to trump the inexperience for Ohio State to be comfortable. And I think if there is another option, which I think they will, try one more time with the lines of communication with. No, this one is much even harder. I know I won't get it right, but Pali Teote.
Yep, that sounds pretty good though.
Maybe I'll have to learn that one. We'll see. There has been reciprocal interest between both of them dating back to, almost as soon as the season ended in January. He was a 5-star linebacker coming out of high school at USC. He's not been a 5-star for them, but that potential still exists, and he's played in some big games throughout his career. He seemed to be heading towards Texas. My understanding is that he was working under the assumption that the Tennessee linebacker was going to pick Ohio State and that he needed to look elsewhere. We'll see if that remains the case moving forward. But when you look in the portal beyond that, the way Ohio State works is that they only really want an instant impact player. They're not trying to take someone who could maybe, if things work out exactly right, help them in a year or two down the road. So if they don't work out something with him, I'm not sure that Ohio State will add another linebacker in the portal.
Yeah. Well, we both know, and we'll get out of here on this. We both know that if people get healthy in that Ohio State linebacker room, I think they get by no matter what happens. I think you agree with that, but you're still kind of hanging on people getting healthy and stepping up, right?
Yep. And that's the key question that Al Washington and Ryan Day will have to answer. Do they have enough faith in a fully healthy core of linebackers that they don't have to go past the second guy who might be available in the portal and could fit for them, which, I think that's the side they would choose, that enough faith that a healthy Dallas Gant, if Taraja Mitchell was ready to take that next step and get fully healthy, what you have with Cody Simon, if you're borrowing a little bit from the bullet with Craig Young or Ronnie Hickman or Court Williams that we talked about, that's enough talent. But the thing they'll have to answer is, do they think that they will make that leap early enough, fast enough in September to help them take the next step defensively? Because that's, 2-0-2-0 was basically a sure thing for them. You knew what you were going to get, all SEC kind of performer, 2 years of starting experience.
Yeah.
That you sleep better at night when you know that he can do it. But, they will likely still bet on these guys and feel good about it if they don't work out something out with the number 2 option there in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I was going to say next year's road trip, you and Berm will be down through the transfer portal. You know what I mean? And where it branches and where it goes and what's pumps at, because we all know that's what's going. That's what's coming. I mean, like Berm pointed out after signing day this year on my podcast and other places. I mean, a lot of teams left room for transfers, as opposed to signing guys. And definitely that's.
Well, I'm not sure how Alabama still has room to keep adding through the portal, but that's a conversation for another day.
That's a wide open state down there, if you follow my drift. But I digress. Ladies and gentlemen, another Tim May podcast is in the books. We have landed this thing. As you noticed, I let Awesome bring it in for a real greaser there at the very end, and he's getting better and better. This time he remembered to put the landing gear down. I appreciate that, Awesome.
We're safe.
But you know what? Until next week, for Awesome Ward, this is Tim May. We'll see you next week on the Tim May Podcast.